Okay, good morning, everyone. Today is Thursday, October 22nd, 2020. The time is 10:01 a.m. and I would like to call to order the Committee on Community Planning and Economic Development. The first item on the agenda is the chairperson's roll call. I will go ahead and name everybody in the meeting. I am Basha Adamczak, 7th Ward Councilwoman and Committee Chair. With us, we have Councilwoman Lauren McNally, Committee Member, Valencia Mero, Beverly Hosey, Hunter Morrison, Councilman Oliver and Committee Vice Chair, John Bralich, Ian Beniston, Nick Cretion, Daniel Bancroft, Nikki Posterly, Sheila Triplett, Marilyn Montez, Councilwoman Turner, Jennifer Ozinger, Sharon Woodbury, Jack Daughtry, Councilwoman Davis, Mayor Brown, and Mike Durkin. Moving on to the second agenda item under new business, we will go ahead and start with the YNDC housing strategy implementation. Would that be Ian? Would you like to start?
Yeah, good morning. I'm going to share my screen here. Bear with me for 1 second. Okay, well, first of all, thank you for giving me an opportunity to review this with everyone this morning. Hopefully you have some good feedback on it. What I'll be talking about this morning is a strategy to improve housing conditions in the city of Youngstown. This is something that we have been working on for the better part of a year, and I'm going to kind of just walk through that process briefly. But before then, I just want to state the purpose of the strategy, which is fairly straightforward, and that is to provide quality and affordable housing for all residents. So this process began, like I said, last fall, the first step of which was conducting a citywide vacancy survey. From there, we moved on to conducting a citywide market analysis. It's really the first citywide market analysis that I'm aware that's been done anytime in the recent decades. So that was done by a third-party market analyst, a professional that does that for a living, called Bowen National Research. I will hit on some of the highlights of that as we walk through this. Then from there, we collected a lot of feedback. I know I've spoken with some of you on council about this already. We did receive comments from 1,700 residents, which I think is a pretty good number. And we had a good team. So this wasn't just a YNDC effort, this was a team effort. Nikki and her team and CPED were part of our core planning team. And we were meeting bi-weekly going through this process. We also had many stakeholders engaged in the process. So banks, businesses, foundations, other community organizations who gave very detailed feedback. As far as where we are in the process now, we've taken all the data and information that we've collected and put together a very detailed housing strategy. And I'm just going to review it kind of at a high level today. Our intention today is to get feedback from the committee and then hopefully be able to move forward in the coming months with council adopting this as the city's citywide housing strategy. And from there, moving forward into implementation. So like I said, the first step in this process was a citywide survey. I think many of you know we've been doing these pretty much every other year for the better part of the last decade. And I will hit on the findings of this shortly. We also surveyed residents. Again, no surprise to any of you, the top things that we heard were eliminate vacant properties, assist owner occupants, rehab housing, build new housing. I'm sure rental properties are registered and inspected, and target code enforcement to nuisance properties. As far as the key data findings from our work, the work that John Bralich did and the work of the market analyst, I did want to hit on some of these. Again, I know for many of you, this is not new information, but one thing I want to point out is that we're a shrinking city in a shrinking region. So that is important when we're trying to understand the housing market and supply and demand. Additionally, our housing stock is very old. Again, I know everyone's heard this, but more than half of the city's housing was constructed prior to 1950, so it's very old. The significance of that is also that most of it presents lead hazards, which is something that we need to consider, particularly with respect to the development of the city's children. And even when we look at the county as a whole, only 7% of the county's housing stock was constructed prior or after rather 2000. So most of the housing in our county is old. When we look at home values, we see that Youngstown's housing market is weak. So a home, and some of this data has changed. This is a couple years old, but a home is worth $44,500 in the city versus $103,400 in the county. The state average is even higher than that, and the average in this country is over $200,000. So you can see we're at about a fifth of that. One thing I really want to highlight, and I know some of you have already heard me say this, but more than half of the city's renters are cost burden. So cost burden is a definition that HUD created that states that anyone paying more than 30% of their household income towards housing costs is cost burden for their housing. So again, more than half of the renters in the city, which is a very significant number. More than half of our renters are cost burden, which means they're spending more than 30% of their total household income just on their housing cost alone. Some other key findings, like I said, we did a vacancy survey citywide. That brought with it some very encouraging news, at least in my opinion. When we did our first vacancy survey back in 2008, we identified almost 5,000 vacant homes in the city. Most recently, in the fall of 2019, we only counted 1,841. I think that's still 1,841 too many, but definitely shows that we are making some significant incremental progress in our collective work here. Another key finding that I think is very important for everyone to hear is that when we look at rental properties in particular, there are at least 5,000 rental properties in the city with some sort of deficiency, and approximately 2,000 that have some sort of severe deficiency. So what I mean by that is a leaking roof, inadequate or non-functional plumbing, an electrical hazard, peeling paint, things of significant, broken windows, things that are significant to the safety of the household. So we have almost 2,000 houses or rental properties that have severe issues.
I'm sorry, can I ask a quick question?
Sure, yeah, please do.
The 5,000 number that we're getting, is
Yep.
that based on how many people are like registered, so we know, or because the owner doesn't match like who the bills are, for example, going to?
No, it's based on survey data. So projecting from our survey findings, the number of rental units with deficiencies, then also a sample of interior inspections. So the 5,000 are minor issues. So that may not be something majorly significant, but the more important number is that we have between 1,000 and 2,000 rental units that have some sort of severe or significant issue. So that would be, again, like a leaking roof, something that is clearly a safety issue for the people living in the household.
Thank you. But I mean, but how are we able to identify that they're rental houses? Is it because they're registered as such?
We're able to identify that through public data, through county audit, looking at the county auditor records. John, through his work, is able to identify that they're rental properties. Thank
you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yep, so just a couple more on the data findings. And another piece of encouraging news, when we did the housing market analysis, their findings is that there was a pent-up demand for housing, pretty much of all types, but definitely serving low-income people as well. So when we look at this breakdown, if you can see the screen, you see this gives what they call housing gap estimates. So this is the likely number of units coming available on the market that Youngstown could support from 2020 to 2025. So if you look at that top section that says rentals, you'll see that there are a number of breakdowns by income strata, starting with extremely low income rental, saying we can support 199 units. If you look at all of those income sections there, you can see we can support likely more than 700 rental units in the next 5 years coming to the market. And if we look at for sale homes, we can support about 800 units, a little less than 800. And there's a pretty good mix of the types of units. You can see perhaps the two most significant under for sale are entry level. So those would be homes priced at $75,000 or less. And the market analysts do believe there is a market for some homes at the higher end of the spectrum as well. So that was generally the data and the key findings. Does anyone have any questions about that? Otherwise, I'll go into the just a brief summary of the strategy as well. Okay, so we took all of this.
Through the chair.
Yes, Anita.
Yes. Ian, do you have the complete list of the rental properties, the ones that you believe are rental properties?
Yes, I have a lot of data. I think be happy to, Nikki can probably send the full strategy document and implementation out to everyone on council. We are just finalizing the layout of the document, but I do have the implementation plan too. So I do believe Nikki intends to share that with everyone.
Okay, and Nikki, so you have the full list of the rental properties?
Through the chair, yes, I have the complete list of the rental properties.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so moving on, just to go through the housing strategy here. So we took the way that we did this, we took all of the data, both from our own research, from the market analysis, as well as what residents and stakeholders were telling us. And there were some clear themes from that feedback. We put together a 7-point housing strategy. So if you look at the screen, you'll see, and again, none of this is really a surprise to most of you, but the first one being eliminate abandoned properties. Number 2 being effectively regulating our rental properties. 3, addressing nuisance properties. 4, properly zoning and regulating community residences. 5, assisting owner occupants, which one thing I should mention there, I didn't when I went through the data review. We found through our analysis that more than half of the city's homeowners are low income people. So just like more than half of our renters are cost burdened, more than half of our homeowners in the city of Youngstown are low income households. Our 6th strategy was to develop and incentivize home buyers, and last but not least, to encourage housing development. So that means both fixing buildings that are already here and building new ones. So we have action steps, and the way we've broken the strategy down is under each of these key areas. We have action steps, and then below the action steps, there's sub-action steps and a whole bunch of detail that I won't be able to go through today, but I did want to hit on the action steps. And like I said, we will share the full implementation strategy, because with each one of these action steps, we've mapped out sub-steps, responsible parties, resources, how we're going to get to achieving all of these goals. So with respect to eliminating abandoned properties.
Julius, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, through the chair. Sorry to interrupt you, Ian.
Yep.
Great job so far. I was wondering, before you went any further, did you research any components in your plan that could involve owner rehab when it comes to possibly being able to retain some of our YSU graduates? So kind of like an offset student loan owner, occupied housing, if they fix the house up, then some student loans are forgiven. I know they have those type of programs in other cities. Is that part of your plan, or is that something you haven't considered?
Yeah, so we're going to go through that in the section about encouraging home ownership. We did look at a number of different strategies, which I'll go through those. I think that's section 5, but that's a good question. I will hit on that when I get to that section.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, as far as eliminating abandoned properties, I'm not going to spend too much time here. None of this is anything groundbreaking or new to all of you. The action steps are to board unsecured properties and assess fines, to clean up trash and dumping on vacant properties, to maintain grass, and to demolish all remaining abandoned properties. This next section, I do want to take a little bit more time on. I personally believe this is the most important section of the strategy, which when we look at our feedback from residents and stakeholders, we got a whole bunch here. So we know that people are very interested in this, but this section is again about effectively regulating rental properties. The first and most important action step is to develop a financially sustainable, performance-based rental licensing and inspection program. So we do already have a rental registration program in the city of Youngstown, but we need to do a couple of things. One, get the percentage of properties that are registered up much, much higher. You know, and we also think that we need to shift to a performance-based system. And what I mean by that is just take a simple rating system. So, you know, if Mike and his team inspect your property and really nothing's wrong, let's say you get a 1 versus a property that they go to that has a whole bunch of issues, and maybe that's a 5 or an F, whatever we want to call it. We'd really focus our follow-up and our continued inspections on those worst properties, because instituting a rental inspection program is really about bringing up the overall quality of housing, which means we need to raise the bottom instead of you know, inspecting houses or apartment buildings that are generally in good repair every year. Perhaps those are only done once every 3 or 5 years, and we're focusing our real energy on the worst of the rental properties. And like I said, we know we have somewhere between 1 and 2,000 that have severe issues, and we really think that that's where our efforts should be focused. So I think it's really about, we've laid out a set of action steps below this, but it's really about tweaking what the city already has and making it more of a performance-based system. Through conversations with Mike Durkin and others, we do think that there are ways that the city can raise private funding to get this started too. So it shouldn't necessarily be all on the city. But we do believe this is something that's very important to raising housing quality for all people in the city. And then the rest of this section is really just a series of additional action steps to make this possible. So the next one I'd also point out, action step 2.2, we've seen this in other cities where they make rental registration a requirement to use services or other public things that you need to do. So one example of that would be if you go to file an eviction in municipal court, you should have your property registered with the city of Youngstown. Otherwise, perhaps the court could institute a rule where they would not hear the eviction. So we know that's the case in the city of Cleveland. You must have your property registered. But even thinking about things like rent assistance, perhaps if someone's getting rent assistance from MyCap, that really that landlord should have their property registered with city, because they are receiving some sort of public benefit through that program. We think we can use these type of tactics to get the registration rate up much, much higher in the city too, but it is gonna take a lot of collaboration with partners and other entities beyond the city government. But I did want to highlight that particular one. Another one I'll highlight here, action step 2.4, develop a plan to make all rental units lead safe. Like I said, we have a very old housing, and making it lead safe is very important to the development of the youth in our city. I think this is something that comes after having that financially sustainable performance-based rental program, but it is something that's very important. And if you look around, even just Ohio, last summer, the city of Cleveland passed a lead safe ordinance and has started to raise tens of millions of dollars to make their housing lead safe. Just this past Tuesday, the city of Toledo passed a lead safe ordinance. So it's something that a lot of cities are taking a hard look at, particularly because of the impact lead has on children.
In 1 second, I'm sorry to interject. May the record reflect that we have attorney Jeff Limbian with us. And Jeff, if you could mute yourself, please.
Through the chair.
Yes, Anita?
Yes, since Attorney Limbian is here. Jeff, do you know if we have a requirement that that in order to get water, city water for properties, a rental property that they have to be registered before they can get our water? Do we have anything in place like that? And if not, can we get it prepared?
Council, through the chair. Councilwoman Davis, it's my understanding that there has been discussion about that, but I haven't confirmed this, but I don't believe that that has been memorialized through an ordinance or a charter amendment.
Okay.
Through the chair, may I address?
Yeah, go ahead, Nikki.
Thank you. We're in early conversations with Harry and his department. John and I actually have a meeting. We're trying to set up a meeting actually actively with Harry and his group. They have shared some data with us that we can start looking at water shutoffs and whether or not before the water's turned on, if, you know, to make sure that that landlord is registered. Attorney Patty Dugan is also on our team, and the mayor will get into that a little more. She's working on those legislations for us and making sure that, you know, when we present this plan, that those things are included. But as of now, it is not a requirement. We're working as a team to make it a requirement.
Okay, thank you. I think that would help us out in making people register their property.
Through the chair.
Yes, Julius.
Thank you. Nikki, how far along are you in implementing the new strategies we discussed in prior months? And is that part of this plan?
With regard to the mapping and the data that we have been discussing, I'm sorry, I don't know which strategies. There's been several, I'm sorry.
As far as registering rental properties and the tactics that could be used to get them done, are any of those going into this plan? That's kind of just like a yes or no.
Once Ian is done with this conversation, there's a second, the mayor wants to hit on our rental registration team. So some of those questions.
Is that during the CPED department update? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Go ahead, Ian.
Okay, sure. Yep. So the next section, again, this one's brief and straightforward, but the next section is about addressing nuisance properties, targeting code enforcements to nuisance rental properties, and using everything within the city's power to address those properties. When we receive feedback from residents and property owners in the city, this is another thing that we heard over and over. In a lot of neighborhoods, there's long-standing nuisance properties that for whatever reason haven't been able to be addressed. And those are things that people are definitely seeing as a priority. The city does, in its current ordinances, does have a lot of power to aggressively address these properties. You know, and I was just speaking with the neighborhood group on the north side earlier this week. Almost all of their issues were long-standing nuisance properties with out-of-town owners. So we see this time and again, and this whole section is really about using those tools to address the nuisance properties in the city. This next section, again, it's brief, doesn't have much to it in terms of action steps, but very important, which is properly zoning and regulating community residences. What a community residence is an adult care facility. You might call it a group home. So we've seen, particularly over the past 7 or 8 years in the city, a lot of requests for spot zoning or changing the zoning of a single family home in a single family residential setting to a group home. Our recommendation related to that is eliminating that practice. So we have mapped, we do have public data, and we have mapped community residences in Mahoning County. The city of Youngstown is disproportionately saturated with community residences and group homes relative to the county, which we think is also something that will require further discussion with other county entities as well. So, but something that's very important, and you know, we've seen in some cases negative impacts to the quality of life. This next section is about assisting owner occupants. I think all of you on council, you're very aware of this. I know everyone gets calls about people that need home repair, but like I said, more than half the homeowners in the city are low-income people. We know just from our citywide survey that there's more than 700 owner occupants that have visibly failing roofs. And if we just look at the raw data, at least half of those are low income people, likely much higher. So we need to continue to push to get as much home repair work done as possible. Other strategies here include looking at ongoing housing and financial counseling to assist people with addressing these issues, as well as preventing foreclosure, increasing access to credit for city homeowners. So if they are able to get a loan, that there's appropriate repair loan and other financial products to help them get done what they need to do. Also, I think something that's important and we don't talk about too much, but I know some of you know this has come up, but we need to have a strategy in place too for relocating homeowners that are living in homes that are beyond repair, which that does come up unfortunately more than it should. So something that we need to be prepared for. This next section is about developing and incentivizing home buyers. So there are a number of things that we can do here and do more of, starting again with housing counseling. Another action step, and Councilman Oliver, both of these 6.2 and 3 kind of get to your question. We think we need to look at down payment assistance and first-time home buyer assistance. So that would get perhaps to some of your ideas related to students and incenting them to stay in the city. Another thing that we've seen effective in other places is having individual development accounts whereby people are rewarded to stay in a housing counseling program and develop a savings that's matched over a certain amount of time so that they have funds for a down payment or purchasing a home. We also think that we need to look at collaboration with Cleveland Housing Partners to develop a lease purchase program in the city. They have what's considered the most effective lease purchase program in the country, and they are working in other cities now, including Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Detroit. So that's something that merits investigation. And last but certainly not least, and everyone knows this, but we need just a larger supply of quality housing. So a market-ready product to be able to attract people.
And Ian, if I may ask, and I think this is kind of goes in line with what Councilman Oliver was asking, but what about even something like, for example, how we are able to offer tax abatements to businesses for, you know, investment? What about like homeowners that are investing in their property and allow that to be, you know what I mean, provide some type of tax abatement?
It's a very well-timed question, because the first action step here in the encouraging housing development is to extend the community reinvestment area to cover the entire city. Currently, it does not. We think it should, but that would do just what you asked. So provide tax abatement for new construction, but also major home repair and renovation. And one thing that I do want to say related to that, we know that this can work and have an impact. The city of Akron, and I believe it was 2017, extended their community reinvestment area citywide. Since that's been done, they've seen hundreds of new units constructed, not just in the downtown too. There have been new units constructed in Akron neighborhoods, and there are a number of major projects underway. So something that definitely merits a further investigation and action there. As far as the other major action steps, one that I'll highlight is just engaging our healthcare providers, insurers, and healthcare institutions and foundations to fund housing improvement and development. So we see across the country healthcare institutions making huge investments in the communities where they are to develop housing, because of it's one of the most important social determinants of health. And like I said, we already know that we have many residents living in low quality housing, and that's certainly not good for their health. So engaging Mercy Health or other healthcare institutions, insurers, and providers to invest is something that's going to be very important. As far as some of the other action steps, one that's important is building the capacity to have more local small-scale developers. We do not have enough capable developers in our city or region, or even capable small-scale developers to do things like rehab houses. Through looking at other places, Pittsburgh has a great program to train neighborhood-based rehabbers and give them access to capital. So there are things that we can do to work on that. And another thing that's critically important here when we talk about encouraging housing development is putting together the right properties. So we've started to look at key sites that may be opportune for housing development, as well as buildings. We still do have some pretty sweet historic buildings that we could look at for repurposing as housing, but we need to have public control of those buildings if they're ever going to have a productive future. So we've begun to chart some of that out. And this final action step, again, this is kind of something that's already been stated, that is developing more market ready housing, not just for sale, but also for rent. When we look not even just at the city, but regionally, most of the rental housing product overall is dated and has starved for investment the past 20 years. That in and out is the strategy. So the next piece here, and just a little bit more and I'll be done, but the next piece is about tracking the work and the evaluation. So for just about all of these things, we have baseline data. So we know where we are now, so which means we can track our progress going forward. So John at YSU has most of this mapped out in terms of charting a course forward from our baseline. We do want to conduct an annual review from here of our progress. And then really the next steps from here are finalizing the strategy, hopefully proceeding with city council adoption, then forming an action team. So, we do have a core planning team, like I already said, with Nikki's team and CPED, but we do want to bring in some external parties too to get this stuff moving forward, as well as routinely communicate and collaborate with council. Hopefully we can routinely talk with the committee here about progress, because this is really going to be a huge effort that we all need to take ownership of and be a part of. And then from there, it's really just about getting the work done and evaluating what we're doing, seeing if it's working as we hoped it would, and tweaking it if we need to. So that's really it. If there's any other comments or questions, like I said, we do have a full, much more detailed implementation plan and strategy document. The strategy document we're just finalizing, but I know that we'll get that out to everyone as soon as we're able.
Thank you, Ian. A couple comments and questions, because I saw that in the beginning you said regarding the process and timeline that October of this year the action team begins working on implementation. So in the action team you're referring to the people that are currently on it, and then what you just mentioned, other members that you're trying to gain as well, right?
Yes. Yep.
And then regarding the city council adopting this, and would that be like via like legislation, like one big plan, and then we would have to probably do other legislation to put some of these other policies in place that we talked about, right?
Yes, so the adoption, I think, and I would defer to Attorney Limbian, but I think it's just a resolution adopting this as the city's housing strategy. But then, yes, you're right, as we go forward, there are perhaps going to need to be some legislative things that are going to need to be done to tweak some of the things that are in existence currently.
Okay, perfect. Yes, Mayor.
I just want to add to that. I think what's going to need to happen is the plan, but then there's going to be legislation for that we can implement. So we don't have some of those legislative out there right now. So if we came together as collectively and we can find legislation that we're missing, that's when we would propose council to pass that, and that would help us with this housing strategy. So those are some of the pieces that we're going to continue to work on. We look forward to looking at places like Pittsburgh. I'm actually on a call with the mayor of Pittsburgh today about the metro economies, and I have a good inside conversation with the mayor of Toledo, so we can get their legislation, bring it to us, and we can craft it so it can work for us. So we need to do that. So that's how the legislation is going to work.
Thank you. And Ian, if you could stop your screen share, so then that way I can see everybody back on my screen in case someone has their hand up and I can't see them. Oh, perfect. Thanks. Are there any questions or comments first from my committee members, from Lauren or Julius? Lauren and then Julius.
The plan looks great. I absolutely love all the pieces of it. I think it's a very doable plan. I think some of the stuff on there won't take very long to execute and get in motion. I guess, and that would be my concern, is that I don't want to see this drag out and take years and years to put pieces in motion, to put some of this stuff is like no brainers and we can be doing today. I don't want to wait a whole year before I see some of that legislation that needs to be passed. So just, you know, set some realistic expectations and some hard deadlines to work towards would be a request of mine, so that this stuff gets moving sooner rather than later.
Yeah, definitely. I agree as well. Oh, and may the record reflect that Councilman Mike Ray is with us, as well as President Demain Kitchen. And go ahead, Julius.
Thank you, through the chair. I would just like to say Lauren took the words right out of my mouth. And just not to be a negative thing, but Ian, just to put some people's, and I'm not even sure you can answer the question, but just to put some of our residents' mind at ease, what do you say to people that may say this is a regentrification project?
Ian.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that it's anything of that sort. I mean, if you look at the whole process we've laid out here, what we started it with was looking at what residents said. I mean, we talked to 1,700 people. You know, we have whole sections of this plan devoted to assisting our homeowners and residents that are already here. So like I said, this is really about is improving housing for people that are already in the city. So when we talk about things like improving rental housing, assisting owner occupants, that's all really talking about assisting our existing residents. And then even when we look at things like talking about encouraging new housing development, that doesn't necessarily have to be for new people, but at the same time, we do know, I think we all know, that we do need to grow at some point and have opportunities for other people to move in the city. But I think you know, and that all of our priorities are that this is about the residents and the people that are already here first and foremost.
Yes, thank you, Ian. And I would just say, would you agree that one of Youngstown's biggest problems is the housing issue and the need for adequate modern housing?
Yes, I absolutely agree. I mean, I think our improving our housing stock is key to stabilizing and revitalizing our neighborhoods, but also just, and I don't want to go on for too long, but just the health of our residents, and particularly when we look at the lead paint issue. I think everyone here has heard me talk about that before, but there's direct connection between lead and how children do in school, between violent crime. All of that is ultimately related to the quality of our housing stock.
Thank you, Ian. Great plan. I really appreciate all the work you guys are doing, and I got a hammer and drill. I'm ready to get going right now.
Thank you. Councilman Turner.
Thank you, through the chair. Again, as my colleagues have said, Ian, thank you for putting this together. I would just like to see the detailed plan and the capacity, so I can get a clear understanding of the capacity of our departments in helping implement this plan, and what's our economic investment and what is the potential ROI on that investment. So just to get a clearer picture of where we're at and where we're going and what that investment looks like from the city standpoint would be helpful for me.
Okay, great. Any other comments or questions?
Through the chair.
Yes, Anita.
Yes, actually, I agree with Samantha. I really like to see the whole thing before we go forward with anything else. And also, Ian, when we're talking about the problem with the lead, and you're only addressing the lead in rental property, correct?
I would, when I speak in generality, I'm talking about lead in all property, but in terms of when we look at lead safe ordinances, those are typically focused on rental properties.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'll just wait for the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Oh, go ahead, Samantha.
All right, and one more question, and really more it's a statement from our CPED department. We are collaborating with the county on lead abatement from homes, correct? That's happening. So they're a part of this entire process too. Okay, I just wanted to be clear on that. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Ian, for the presentation. Look forward to seeing where this goes, and as everyone mentioned, hoping we can implement it sooner than later. The next item on the agenda is the EAG presentation and contract renewal. Who would like to start speaking on that first? Nikki or Nick? Nick?
I have a presentation ready to go. I don't know if Nikki wants to preface it with anything.
No, you can go ahead, Nick. We can.
Okay, cool. Give me 1 second. I'll open up the PowerPoint.
Great. Thank you, Nick.
Can everyone see it? We good to go?
Yes.
Perfect. So I'm here with the Economic Action Group. We are a 501c3 based in Youngstown. We do work across the Mahoning Valley, but since April, we have been a city planning, core and corridor, COVID response based planning partner of the CPED department since about April. And here's just a little overview of what we're going to cover. But our focus areas are in economic development, entrepreneur assistance, and we realize these things through anchor institution partnerships. Outside of contracted services with the city, some of our primary programming is commercial property revitalization, or what we call CPR, the COVID response that we did valley-wide up in Liberty Township and the city of Warren, different outreach and engagement services, and contracted work in alignment with focus areas. And we've been around since 2013 as an informal group, meeting about monthly at the YBI. That stopped about 3 years ago when we identified strategic areas that we could intervene and build capacity as an organization to help further some local goals. But other projects we're involved in were also the commercial corridor market analysis, which was a partnership with the city, YNDC, and many other planning partners. Some wayfinding you may see downtown, different node planning based off of that market analysis, and even some placemaking projects in the past, and what you'll see in the future with the statue project, like the Shotgun Chuba and Robinson statue. All of our work, though, is based on past plans. We are not reinventing the wheel with any of the work that we do. It is all progressive. It all builds upon previous work, but helping the city realize any of the goals that have been articulated and clearly spelled out in the past, using data, key metrics, to really further goals that are relevant today in terms of economic development and any planning. The first big thing, since this was a majority of the start of our contract that I'll review, was our COVID response. We did basic outreach to any business that we could get our hands on in terms of the data for contact information. We exported citywide databases and began basically a mini call center on behalf of the city to do outreach, informing businesses that may not have the knowledge or know-how, accounting or legal, about the PPP and EIDL loans, including lenders that if they were locked out of their own bank or credit union, how they could access these funds. That began in April 24th in the city of Youngstown, a little bit sooner in Warren, but it included extensive data collection about every single call that we made. Since the restaurant and bar industry is based on people congregating in singular spaces, we did specific outreach to that sector after the initial efforts were started. And we even helped the city health district convene some meetings. And some of the end results were that the T process was simplified from the CPED level, as well as the beginning of planning for the DORA, or outdoor refreshment area. And these efforts were not just recognized in Youngstown, but by the chair of the Federal Reserve. We were asked to sit on a call with Jerome Powell and President Mester from the Cleveland Federal Reserve to discuss the work that was done in Youngstown. And then we also sat in on a call with Sherrod Brown for the Northern Ohio economic development leaders, discussing just this perspective with Mayor Brown and many other leaders. Just some basic info to hit on some points. There were over 2,000 businesses valley-wide called. 25% of the respondents applied for the loans. And as I said, there was some targeted outreach to specific sectors that were especially hard hit or provided data that we could access and distribute information on a mass basis. Here, this is the spreadsheet specifically for Youngstown. I'd be happy to share any of this. I'm not going to go over specific numbers, but you can just see the sheer number of calls and outreach and data we were able to track to see where people were at in terms of this federal aid that was available, and hopefully there's some more on its way. And we even broke it down by sector, the status of the businesses, if they remained stable, if they downscaled, upscaled, not many did. But we did receive promising news that many did remain stable even in the tough times, and even classified it by sector so that we could know where to potentially target our time and resources. And from our side of things, we had tripled our staff in 1 month to be able to do all this outreach. We started with the core and corridor approach and moved in from each at the direction of CPED, and you can kind of see the list that we had targeted this all through. And it was in the form of calls, emails, letters. We would mail the information if people weren't on email just regarding the assistance, and would even walk them through it and talk into their bank to be able to get to receive these dollars. And then, as I had said, we specifically targeted the bars and restaurants, plotted them out, and then helped host and facilitate citywide meetings for each different side of town, just based on the unique challenges. And this is really where the T and Dora conversation had to help these owners out. I mentioned the citywide health call that we had helped facilitate, and eventually resulting in the T process. Here's West Side Bowl, who I believe was one of the first ones in Youngstown to go through the full process at the city level and state level in terms of liquor control down in Columbus, and potential DORA planning to help businesses that can't have the usual occupancy inside. Now they can expand to outdoor and potentially public spaces too. Other general projects that we had worked on, one of our first projects was inventorying industrial parks, evaluating properties, site planning, coordinating with many of the partners on this call, but including specifically YSU data and mapping for many of the city planning projects that were ongoing, collaborative efforts with code enforcement and Mike Durkin, and even providing some feedback and data from many of our projects on pending grants, whether that was at the YSU or department level. I know Beverly's been working on some EPA grants we've provided information for. And we even have a registered pilot on staff for droning roofs when properties need evaluated that we've been able to break out a few times. Example of the inventory that we had put together right there for you guys. This is our property evaluation form. When we evaluate a property, we go through the full process and submit that to the requesting party at the department level, just detailing any interventions that may need made to save the property, more so on the commercial side of things, where YNDC has a great grip on the residential evaluations. And one of the first things we do with the drone is actually get a shot of the roof to see if the building's been compromised, because once that goes, the chances of saving it are vastly decreased. And then some other general projects we've assisted with were the state of the city. Right before COVID, it unfortunately did not occur. Planning and design for different packets, planning documents, help distribute using previous information from our COVID response, distributing surveys and information to small businesses in the city where we had that direct line of contact. Beginning to look into something we called Startup in a Day, which is refining the business and permitting process to be as easy as possible, where theoretically you would be able to start your business in a day, and many other cities follow this model, but we do not have it here. It's something I want to finish in a potential next contract. We've worked on business attraction guides, grant assistance, and even helped with some existing grants that are being collaboratively implemented with Cleveland State and Hunter. And then even when Director Wheeler was in town last week, this is just an example of some of the documentation that we had put together for this site visit, from the design level to the text, just full scale planning and design for this sort of stuff. I took out the specifics of this, but we had even helped prepare mapping and attraction guides for a potential business that wanted to relocate here. I'm trying to keep it private in terms of the information, but it shows a good idea of what the development of the design looks like. In future projects, we would like to finish the economic guide. Many cities, if you go there, it basically just shows off the assets of the area and a lot of the data that businesses use to make decisions to relocate to areas. And we got a good start on it, but there's a lot of work to do on something like this that needs to be done. And other projects that we would hope to continue in the future is continued CPED planning and assistance, continued outreach and engagement if there is future aid available, completion of the economic development marketing guide, formalization of DORA and other development plans that help businesses navigate the COVID times or restaurants at this time, and then potentially branching out into the economic development marketing side of things that is really an underutilized potential for the city right now in terms of newsletters, annual reporting, and even branching into the startup in a day portal where people could get all the permits they need at a one-stop shop that does not yet exist. And continuing to follow the lead of CPED in terms of whatever projects are requested, we find a way to scale up and address the city planning need that is there. But just trying to give a quick overview of who we are, what we do. If there's any project or questions about projects or specifics that I listed, I can go back to the slides, but appreciate everyone's time today, kind of giving an overview of what we've been doing for you guys and hope to continue to do.
Thank you, Nick. That was a great presentation. This is not a question, it's more so a comment. I appreciate all of the work that you guys do. I think it's a great collaboration having you guys, work with the city. We frequently speak about how important economic development is because we need that income tax revenue. We need people to invest in the city. And I know when Nikki first came on board, we had several conversations how important it was to have all the marketing material and all of those things that you're mentioning and presenting to have readily available for potential businesses. So that's really exciting to see that. And also looking at your scope of service, and you also mentioned during the presentation to have the annual report and the newsletter. And I think that's so important because I pulled it from my paperwork that I had over here, the ones that we get from the county. And I don't know if they come out quarterly or how, or every 2 months, but I know I look forward to seeing these and what's going on with the county. So I think to have something on a scale that, illustrates and shows what Youngstown is doing is great as well. So I thank you and I look forward to the continued collaboration as well.
Thank you, Brian.
Any questions or comments from my committee? Julius?
Thank you, through chair. Nick, I agree with Basha, commend you on a great job you've been doing. I remember, meeting you guys way back in the day when you were still a student at YSU. And the projects we put together even then, including the downtown business directory and how you categorized all the businesses. And we discovered it was over 400 some businesses downtown when people were really just concentrating on Federal Street. You know what I mean? So my question is, have we updated that directory at all? I know it's still in use right now, but do we like annually or quarterly update that business directory so that, people always have a scope of what's going on with the business downtown? Or I know we have plans of actually putting that into a brochure style information packet, something like what Councilwoman Adams Act just held up. Is that still in the works, or is that something that isn't happening right now?
So we have not updated that spreadsheet that was put together back in 2016. But through our COVID outreach and engagement work, we do have pretty comprehensive inventory of businesses downtown and citywide that could probably be refined pretty easily into one of those, either a brochure, another simplified spreadsheet, whatever was requested, if it was a priority of importance at this point in time.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely like to see something like that happen. So, it's something we can mail out, something that can be readily available kind of at the visitor center or something like that with the county. I just like to commend you on, all you guys' work and, encourage you to continue to push the envelope and continue to make Youngstown great. Appreciate it. Thank you. Not like that, not like make Youngstown great, not like that. I'm just,
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Oh, Samantha.
Thank you through the chair. There's a lot of work going in here, and really appreciate that hard work from EAG. I just have a quick question. When this all began, were we able to provide him with a list of businesses from the city that he needed to reach out to, or did you guys have to go ahead and do that legwork to begin the process of that?
So we had the added benefit of being able to at least tap into that database that was put together in 2017. We exported through publicly available databases or maybe a subscription service, Reference USA, for a lot of that stuff, and even referencing other inventories we've taken. But that was something we had put together. We're happy to organize it however you guys need it, but that was mostly from exporting.
Okay.
Do you have follow-up, Samantha? Go ahead.
Yes. And thank you, the chair. So I also, with this plan or with the work that you're doing, I would also like to understand the capacity of our department, because we are outsourcing a lot of work, and I'm hearing a lot of things that I feel like I should be able to go right to our department and grab that information. So I would like to know, what's the capacity of our department and outsourcing it, the impact. I don't know if Cal's on here, financial impact, and how that is helping us grow. If we need to invest more in the department, does this skill set exist in our department, which is why we have to outsource for it. But the work that the EAG is doing, and I feel like we should have that somewhere in the city. And I know that we're working on this database, so I do want to see how all this is coming together. I can hear from the mayor later or Nikki later as to where we're going with this, but it does seem like some of this information should be at our fingertips already. And how do we get to that space? Because Youngstown, we trail behind just a little bit, and I think it's time for us to move forward and take this time.
Nikki, is that something you'd like to address? And then I believe Councilman Oliver had his hand up.
Sure. So our economic development department is a division of two. It's a division of two, Sharon and Vicky. The presentation that Nick provided for us is a team approach. Nick has an entire team that helps us with marketing. That's one of the things that we noticed early on is we don't have a marketing and advertising niche within, because we don't have the software, we don't have the data, and that's something that we are working with our internal IT department to secure the data that we need to provide the information. Nick works with various interns that can turn things around for us quickly, whereas internally, if we had to do it again, we're at a deficit because we just don't have the programming for it or the manpower for it. So having Nick and his team on board has been tremendous in the quality of work that they've been able to provide to us based on our own limitations with just those types of artistic design and marketing design and outreach with the database that he has. So that's been a great help to us. We started this agreement with EAG focused on COVID relief because we knew at the time we were even in a furlough situation. So Sharon alone couldn't do the outreach of 4,000 businesses, in the time period that we needed to get the information in. So Nick's team was able to get that done for us in a couple of months. So we understood from there the value of having them on board, and it just started to evolve, adding and the mayor had an intern that we were trying to start a newsletter with, and interns come and go. And then again, COVID hit, our intern left. So now we have a team that we can start our newsletters and keep it going and have an annual plan. So these other initiatives started to evolve, which is why we wanted to increase the scope of services that they're able to provide us, that we just don't have the manpower or the infrastructure within to provide.
Yeah, so Nikki, it actually seems from what you're saying that this is a cost savings, because now we have access to a whole team that has, each individual person on Nick's team has like a niche or an expertise that they're able to provide us. Whereas if we had to go out and hire individual positions, I mean, it sounds as though it would be a lot more costly.
That is correct. Thank you.
Samantha, follow up, and then Julius.
Thank you. So EAG, you are a marketing, advertising, and strategy agency.
I would say city planning and economic development marketing to summarize. Planning expertise mixed with the design capacity to really show the plans and make them become a reality and visualize it.
Great. And what other communities do you work with?
City of Warren, Liberty Township. We've worked collaboratively across the Boardman Township line on some of our node planning. Struthers, probably across the valley really summarizes it up, but primarily in Youngstown is where a lot of our work is based.
Thank you.
Julius.
Thank you. I'm just glad to see this happen. I mean, I've been advocating to bring EAG in as part of, the help system of Youngstown to get things done for years, and I'm glad to see it happen. And I would like to see it continue. On the level of marketing, I would like to have those City of You videos, those marketing videos that we spent $14,000 on and rarely have been seen by the community, turned over to EAG, so maybe we can figure out a marketing strategy, put those out to businesses and corporations and people abroad, so we can start to attract more people into Youngstown. I think that was the purpose of making those videos, is not only to attract people and businesses into the city, but also to basically encourage our residents to be a part of the city and start changing the thinking in Youngstown. And why those videos have not been seen yet is really irritating, because we spent a lot of money on those things. But the last thing I'll suggest is that, Nick, I know we have a good working relationship, but what is your process of communicating with the council people in whichever ward you may be working on projects in?
Sure. So usually our contract is through CPED, so I usually either report to Nikki or Sharon on a project basis and rely on that city connection to distribute information to the council people. I can communicate directly with the council people if that is preferred, but that's just the line I've taken, is reporting through our contractual agreement to the city and allowing that to be distributed that way.
Well, thank you. Not to put an additional burden on you, but we don't always get communication as we should. So if you could maybe, and I could be the only council person that feel like this, but if you could at least, send out some type of notice to let the council person know, hey, we're working on this in your ward, something you may be interested, or you may have some input for this particular project, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Through the chair.
Thank you. Yes, Sharon.
I just wanted to respond to Councilman Oliver in terms of the videos. We certainly have room to grow in using those videos, but the economic development is actively using the videos. We have connected it to a QR code. So when we're sending out emails and correspondence to companies that we're looking to attract, we do connect them through that QR code to videos that were put together through that City of You funding.
Thank you.
Sharon.
Through the chair?
Yes, Anita.
Yes, Sharon, those videos, can you transfer those videos to either a file or a DVD and get a copy of them to me? I'd like to see those things, if you think it's appropriate, on television. I like to have our residents see our city on TV, and I know we can get it on a couple of channels. So is it possible to get a copy of those things to me?
Yes, we can get that to you.
Thank you. I'll get them on the air quickly.
Thank you, Nita. And I agree. I mean, I think so often, you know, we see things on TV and on the news that are in a sense negative about the city. So I think it would be nice to be able to highlight the positive things that we have going on in the city and encourage the residents that, you know, Youngstown is a great place. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next agenda item, we have the CPED department updates. I don't know if Nikki, you want to start and preface what we're going to be discussing today.
I just wanted to give the opportunity at the end of this meeting for Sharon and Beverly just to highlight some of the things that are going on in their division. And then the mayor's going to talk about our initiative with our rental assistance committee and kind of tie in Ian's presentation, some of the help that Nick's been doing, you know, with us to discuss our next steps with the committee.
And then just for clarification, is today's meeting is going to be kind of more broad in general, and then I believe the next meeting we're going to dive, you know, deeper into specific details by department. Is that what today?
By division, yes.
Okay. Thank you. So who would like to start? Should I give Mayor or Nikki, or you're going to continue?
Mayor, did you want to go first since I think you have to get off at...
Yeah, I would appreciate it if I could. First of all, I want to thank all the partners who are on here today. I realize how much time and dedication you have to this community. What I wanted to talk about is actually another partnership that we're considering, and we want council to help in crafting that and helping us do so. If I could just give you a brief history on, we have a Human Relations Commission, and it's been in the city for some time, and it branched off. I actually sat in that seat. Just to give you a background, it was always with an agency that was actually engaged in the community, working on social issues, whether it be housing, employment. There was an agency engaged and involved in that. So in the most recent years, we've gotten away from that. And what I like to do is have us get back to that opportunity where we bring the Human Relations Commission up to be a part of an agency. Just a real brief story. Before COVID hit, myself, Mike Durkin, and Ian, and a couple of us sat down and talked about landlord registration. And the concept I had was that if you're a landlord and you trying to evict somebody, you have to be registered. We didn't have that legislation on the book, and Mike Durkin went out and researched it. So we start talking about evictions and how that, you know, we talked about the transient population and how there was fair housing issues out there. And then we found out, if we dig a little deeper, how much rent they were paying. So the conversation really started to snowball, and then COVID hit. And then during COVID, there was a moratorium on evictions. And we were fortunate to have a great team that got together, our rental assistant team, and we start talking about what's going to happen when that eviction moratorium runs out, and what can we do to help the community and come together and kind of pool our resources. So what I thought, we need to really focus on combining our resources and coming up with a plan to deal with that. Nikki, you want to put that our brochure up if you could? So one of the things we talked about was renting, landlord assistance, but talked about all the different partners we're working. And the one quote, and Sheila, I remember when you said this, she says, we actually will pay someone's rent, but we're not sure what kind of quality house they're living in. We're not sure how long they're going to be in that home. So we wanted to make this a full comprehensive opportunity for somebody to really be engaged and involved in kind of a one-stop shop. And what I wanted to do as mayor, the contract for Human Relations Commission comes under the mayor's office. And I wanted to expand our involvement and engagement. And I wanted council to consider letting Border Controls enter into a contract with MyCap to be that agency that will house the Human Relations Commission, so that we could focus on individuals if they call and complain about housing. That may be the same group or organization. We just paid the rent for that landlord, yet the tenant's calling for the Human Relations Director and saying, hey, listen, this house is substandard, there's some issues with it. Or that may be the individuals coming by to get assistance with their water, to get their water bill paid. And then we're realizing that the issue is that they don't have employment. So we have a list of employers who actually should be seeking employees, and the employers are saying, well, I can't find anyone to work. Well, now we're trying to combine them all together, where if we can bring the Human Relations Commission under MyCap, and when they come to MyCap for services, those things can be addressed, and it's an opportunity for us to really focus on the workforce development, where MyCap's a part of that, Flying High is a part of that. But also there's some legislative pieces that I think Attorney Dugan may want to talk about, is how legally how we can help them. So this is a whole partnership, and what I love to do is have some of my partners talk about the progress with our eviction team, some of the things that we've been able to work on. But I wanted to be able to actually pool and come together as a city and put someone from our end to help further, combine our resources for our partnership with this organization. So if I wanted to, if I could, I'll stop. And if Sheila wanted to jump in, or Marilyn, and talk a little bit about how the partnerships work and what it looks like for the city as well as MyCap. And we had been talking about how do we really dig into fair housing, impediments to fair housing. And I think this is a great step to do so. And I think it just speaks well with N's strategy on housing as well.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Oliver.
Thank you, through the chair. Mayor, as either the chairman or former chairman of the Human Relations Commission, I'm still waiting because I don't know if I've been reappointed or not. But in the time that we've been waiting for you to appoint people back to the Human Relations Commission, is this plan? Is this what we've been waiting for? Like, why we haven't been able to, convene with the quorum and everything is because you were planning this?
Actually, this is actually probably going to help us make sure that we have a Human Relations Committee meeting and that we can meet quorums. We've put out several requests. I think what we need to make sure that we drive the Human Relations Committee to come to meetings and quorums. When I was the director, that was part of the working with the NAACP when I worked for that agency, is that we made sure that we had a good recruiting effort, and this is going to be another piece of that to help. So the absence of the commission getting together, this is part of my plan to make sure that we re-engage, restructure, but also have a recurring recruitment process of individuals and like-minded individuals that will focus on housing and employment.
Thank you, Mayor. I just ask in the future, when you're going through the planning process, to just, try to engage some of us that are on that commission so we know what's going on in the meantime. But it seems like a great plan. Seems like it could work. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheila, I believe, were you going to present or say something?
Yes, I can. We started this process, right at the beginning of the COVID outbreak, just looking at how we can combine our resources, everyone in the community that does rental assistance, and MyCap being the agency that does the majority of the rental assistance. We probably do almost $1 million a year in rental assistance and water assistance. We wanted to make sure that we had a process in place that made it simpler for people to access our services. Because there's a lot of agencies that do the same thing that we do, but we wanted to make sure that people recognize where they can go. And MyCap, we volunteered to be the entry point for that process, that if people call us, we can refer them to other agencies. Work very closely with Nancy Voitis from Catholic Charities. And, when you work with a lot of these grants, there's different guidelines, there's different income guidelines. And so there's some people that we can provide services for, and some people are over our income guidelines. And working with Catholic Charities, we're able to make those referrals so that these people aren't caught, up in trying to figure out, where do I go now? If MyCap can't help me because I'm over income, then where do I go now? So we've got some community health workers who are like the liaisons with Catholic Charities and helping to make those connections and making sure that people receive the services that they need as soon as they can. We've both been benefited by having some CARES dollars, both MyCap and Catholic Charities. We're working collaboratively right now to try to, we've got Catholic Charities has some money from the county. We've got some CARES money that's coming, roughly $2 million of CARES money that we've got to try to help as many people as we can before the end of the year. That sounds like a daunting task, and it is, but working together and trying to come up with a process, we're going to do the very best that we can. It's good that we're having this conversation today so that everyone on the call can know that we're doing this, and that if you want to make referrals for individuals that need rental assistance or have delinquent water bills, sewage bills, that we are able to help them now up to 300% of the poverty level. I see someone's hand.
Yeah, Councilman Oliver.
I know Samantha has something first. I seen her. She had her hand up before me.
Okay, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Turner.
Yes, I have a question for Sheila. Ms. Triplett, you do have a plan already prepared for the COVID dollars you have coming, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you, in addition to the 70,000 that's coming from our health department and that 2 million, you have all of that has to go out by the end of the year, or have you solidified there being an extension for you?
It all has to go out. So far, it all has to be expended by the end of the year. It's federal dollars. Only Congress can give the extension for it to go beyond December 30th. You know, we've got legislators that are working right now trying to see if we can get an extension, but currently we have to expend as much of that money as we can by the end of this year.
Thank you. And one more question through the chair. So are you outsourcing more partnerships as well, or are you doing everything in-house?
We've contacted mortgage agencies. We've contacted some of the county, because we're a county program. A lot of times people think that MyCap is just a city program, but we're a county program. So we've contacted all of the county administrators, and we're working with them, and we're trying to get them to make referrals to us. We work very closely with Patty Dugan to get those individuals that are in the process of being evicted. So we're working with as many other agencies and programs within the city that have customers that need our assistance to refer them to us, to either MyCap or Catholic Charities, so that they can get assistance.
Okay, Councilman Oliver.
Okay, I'm not really sure who can answer this question, but it's kind of like three questions. Number one, what's the date when this is expected to start? Number two, how would this then be able to handle the upcoming situation? I don't know if any of my colleagues are receiving these phone calls like I am, but the situation with Choice Homes and the rent going up and people not being able to purchase their house, the debacle is going on there. And three, where does this leave Jonathan Bentley, his responsibilities with like EOC and dealing with tax incentives, and are those still, does he still have a contract as well? Does he still has the same responsibilities? Is this turning over strictly to these new partners? How does this all work?
Let me, if I could, I'll take a swing at it.
Yes, go ahead, Mayor.
The date would start when council, if we would put up legislation, that council would give us the BOC, the go ahead to enter into agreement. As I do every year, I put up, when I did with Mr. Bentley, I put up the contract. Council would give us the BOC, the authorization to do so. So it will be as soon as that would happen. I'm hoping November we would be able to do so, because I don't think council has another meeting until November. So that's the one piece. The Choice Home, I think you hit it right on the head when you're talking about those same individuals will be coming to MyCap, because now if my rent's going up, now I'm taking money from one pocket of a resource and taking to other, and I may become deficient in doing so. So this is a great way for us to kind of really have that one-stop shop to deal with that, but also to look at the how they're regulating their rent. What's that look like? I think Ian talked about how much of my income am I spending on rent now? What's my disposable income? The last piece, the EOC and Jonathan Bentley, our desire is that he would have seat at the table on this to remain as the Human Relations Commission director. Councilman, I think the one thing that I liked about coming together with the Human Relations Commission and your Tax and Incentive Review Commission is because when those employers tell you, oh, I can't find anybody. Well, no, we've got MyCap, we've got a workforce development, and we've got people with the skills to make sure these employers are part of the hiring process. So we're kind of taking them out of they can't say that I can't find anybody, because here we are, you know, Jonathan will walk down the hall and talk to the workforce development or case manager and say, I'm looking for 30 people for this opportunity for employment. This is why I think we do that, a better communication, a better conduit, and a greater process to deal with this.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we're probably gonna need some more conversation on this, as well as some more type of investigation into whatever's going on with Choice Home, because it's putting a lot of burden from the phone calls that I'm getting on people that were under the impression they could purchase their home and now they can't. Their home has been sold to somebody else, their rent has gone up, and I'm not sure if people understand the contract language and the way things were phased out with that whole situation, but it's creating a really big hardship for some of our residents in the city. And I know that's something that the Human Relations Commission was attempting to tackle some months ago. And I just like to see if this partnership is going to work. That be one of the first issues that it tackles. I know some other people in this communication has had those phone calls as well, and it's an issue.
Sure, Councilman. I think what I'd love to do is to work with you on this. This is something I've gotten the calls as well, and right now we're bridging the gap with Mr. Bentley. So we continue to have him do service. So if there's issues out there, I'd like to really dig a little deeper. This is probably way off the subject, with those who bought the property and then how did they come up with the rents and just unexplained. So I'd love to work with you on this.
Thank you. Councilwoman Turner.
You know, just a question. Mr. Bentley, where is his office and who does he directly report to?
Well, I thought somebody was trying to jump in. Well, he has several offices. I worked from home when I was in the Human Relations Commission. He reports to giving us metrics to the mayor and the Human Relations Commission. And I think that's where the gap's at right now. It's kind of an independent contractor. And I want to make it more of where we get more return on what we're doing and we can see it every month. So there's some of those pieces are missing, specifically when it became COVID. I know he went to working from home when COVID happened.
I have a quick question. From my understanding, I believe Councilman Oliver mentioned that the Human Relations Commission has not been meeting up until this point. That's one of the entities you said that he would report to. So during these last several months, I don't know if he's still under contract. I believe he is. So has he been reporting to you in the work that he's been doing independently?
Yes, he's been giving me information, but that's where I started looking at where we had a gap. We didn't have a Human Relations Commission, and I found myself as mayor out there actively recruiting that, and that's not my role. The role of the Human Relations Commission director and that agency that he works for, we're actually one who would go out and do recruiting for them. So that's why I need an agency. I need a stable kind of a home base for this. Don't put a person in it. I want you to put actually the program in there. And I think this program is needed right now. And I want to make sure that we put it somewhere where it's going to get the bang for the buck. So, you know, if Councilman Oliver says, hey, listen, I called the Human Relations Commission and I'm going to have everyone call from the Choice Homes to, you know, one number, and then we kind of can able to put it through the process and find out what the problem is.
One more question, then I'm sorry, Cynthia, I saw you have your hand up. Just for clarification, so who actually appoints the members to the commission, to the human? Yes.
The mayor. Yes. So I go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask, so how many members are we short in order to be able to have quorum and meet?
You're real short. I got four potential individuals that are ready to go once we go with this organization And if Councilman Oliver decides he wants to stay on, that'll be 5. So I do have, I've been recruiting. I do have applicants who would be willing to serve on the commission.
Thank you. Did you have a direct, Julius? And I'm sorry, Samantha.
Yeah, through the chair. Okay, so what do we do about, there's also for quite some time been no participation from the law department. I know the law department used to come and speak on, you know, EEOC and other issues with contractors and, you know, how we deal with the bidding process and contractors that we hire into the city and where they are in hiring minorities or whatever. We haven't had those partnerships from the city level for, it has to be like two or more years. So are we going to beef up that as well with along with MyCap and everything else? Is the city going to start participating? I know like Bill Carter and Yvonne Mathis used to, you know, play their part in the HRC. Those positions have still been vacant as well. So where does where does everybody fit in? How do we fill all of that, not just the committee members?
I think, Mr. Councilman, I think your questions are dealing with the gap and the need for me to have a firm foundation of an agency. The reason the human relations came about was that they wanted an outside entity to look at, you know, housing and employment, and that's how the contract came. All the time when Mr. Carter did it, he was with an agency. When I did it, I was with an agency. When Jonathan Huff did it, he was with an agency. And those roles and those scopes of services were being actually taken care of. I don't want to get too far in the weeds about a person. I want to really talk about a contract with the agency. Here's their scope of service. Here's their roles and responsibilities. And we're not getting it because with the agency, you know, it's about, you know, it'll be progress. It would be metrics from Sheila and her staff and whoever the Human Relations Commission director. So I'd rather look at the contract with the agency, our scope of service. If you're saying, Mayor, I want to make sure that that's on the scope of service, we'll make sure that when we get to that point of sharing the scope of services and the information for the contract, that's what I want you to have.
Thank you.
And and then Samantha, and also I think if we want to talk about this in detail, we could also schedule another meeting because I believe there's still several other people that want to give broad updates regarding CPED. But go ahead, Samantha.
Actually, it's deeper and I got the slight answer. So we'll wait till the next meeting. Thank you.
Who is going to present next? Nikki, did you have a preference of where we're going next?
Beverly or Sharon?
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Sharon.
Okay. If I could go first, I appreciate it. I have a dentist appointment that I need to get to. So I'm looking at what I want to go over just to cover briefly. I know we've got limited time. So first I'll start with the activity in terms of us working with businesses and some of the investment and job creation. So right now there are $20 million in attraction activity that's happening where we're working with companies, engaging with them for potential projects that we'd like to bring to the city. Total investment that would result from those projects is $29 million and 110 jobs. In the pipeline, these are companies that have identified sites. They've indicated that they've got projects that they're interested in moving forward with. We've got a proposed total investment of $54,150,000. Investment that will result from those projects, 128 jobs to be created and a retention of 44.5 jobs. Under construction or complete projects that we've worked with in bringing them to the city, they are now currently under construction or complete. That totals $47.9 million, creation of 86 jobs, retention of 104 jobs, and relocating 60 jobs. I wanted to touch on some of the things that Nick discussed with the committee. In our last council meeting, we heard from our council members, and they really were asking about marketing services. They were asking about streamlining business services. Those are all things that we've prioritized and are part of what Nick is proposing to you in response to what we've realized is needed, but also making sure that we're integrating what council has requested. So we are working on that. Nick has been doing a fantastic job, and it is a team effort. I wanted to also highlight a program. We've heard a number of times about our workforce needs. It comes up with our Tax Incentive Review Council. We know that we are reaching milestones of poverty that we don't want to be recognized for. Those are all workforce issues. And I really think it's important for us to stress that there is a supply side and there's a demand side. We really have to step up as a community and encourage that demand side, increasing our pipeline of our residents in terms of being employable. They need employable skills. Graduating from high school and getting a job is just not the reality that we live in. We have to encourage our young people and those who are dislocated workers into seeing what services are available and trying to make sure we market those programs, get them out there and understanding that there are opportunities there, but they have to take steps specifically to get there because we do have a gap. It's not just in our city, but we're feeling it a lot more than other cities because of a lot of challenges that we have. So I wanted to just real quickly review a program I sent. I think all of the council members this information maybe a month or so ago. And it's a program that I've been looking to try to connect a lot of our employers with when they're identifying workforce gaps, and we're trying to get city residents into those positions. And that's a program that Mahoning Valley Manufacturers Coalition has sponsored from some grant dollars that have come in. And it positions a lot of our underskilled residents in positioning them for great job opportunities. So there's a 5-week training program. They're being paid $250 a week stipend weekly to participate in that training. There are partnerships that are helping there and providing support services. MyCap is part of that, Goodwill, Eastern Gateway, and Aspire. All of them are providing support services, but also trying to upskill who are our residents in making them candidates for potential jobs. It's a great opportunity. This is not the first time that this program has come around. I talked about it. I think this was probably 4 years ago when they had a cohort together. We want to try to keep this going, but our participation has been pretty low. They are not able to start the next training because there just weren't enough people who expressed interest and applied for the program. They had, I think, 30 positions or 30 students that they could take through the program. We got 5. So we really have to, this needs to be our message. We need this message to be that there are opportunities for our residents. There are programs that are there for our residents. We've got Eastern Gateway that's offering free tuition. We've got programs that are coming from One Stop where they're doing case management and trying to really provide some wraparound services to help our young people position themselves for jobs. But we've got to get better participation from our residents so that they can take advantage of the opportunities that are there.
Thank you, Sharon. And I think it kind of all ties in together with the marketing and what EEG is able to provide. I think sometimes we lack participation, not because there's a lack of interest, but rather a lack of knowledge that residents aren't even aware that some of these things exist. Thank you. Nikki?
Just to give an overview of what we're doing in planning and how all of this ties together. we want to do a more detailed, again, as Chairperson Councilwoman Adams-Ike said, at our next meeting of some of our planning efforts, and it'll give a better insight into what Ian is doing, what Sharon is doing, what EAG is doing, what Beverly's doing on the community development side. So we're looking forward to that. And I'm going to turn it over to Beverly to just give an overview, since now we're coming to, we've rounded the bend with our consolidated plan. So she's just talking about her next steps and where we're going to go from there.
Great. Thank you, Beverly.
Okay, good morning, everybody, and thank you. The first thing I wanted to cover quickly is I'm working on completing the 2019 CAPER, and that is the Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report that we have to complete and submit to HUD. And briefly, what that report is, it provides an annual performance reporting on client outcomes and outputs that enable an assessment of our city's performance in achieving the housing stability outcome measures that we originally put in our consolidated plan. And the report fulfills statutory and regulatory reporting requirements and provides the city and HUD with necessary information to assess the overall program performance and accomplishments against the goals and objectives. So this report has to be submitted to HUD, then they review it, and then they will send a letter, a copy to me and a copy to the mayor, to kind of let us know if the outcomes were acceptable and if the city has the capacity to manage further funds for federal funds. So that report is typically due in September at the end of the 180 days after the end of our fiscal year, but HUD has extended. So we're going to have ours submitted in November, and we will have the whole document for public display for 15 days once we complete it. So I will update you and let you know when that document will be available for public review. The next thing that I'm working on is a contract with the county for lead hazard control. So they're going to be rehabbing approximately 45 houses for each year for a 3-year period. We have committed $400,000 of CDBG funds as a match for the county's $4 million grant that they received for the lead hazard control program. So I'm working with the director of the county's program to get that agreement together. And we will likely be doing rental and homeowner properties, lead hazard control measures. Just beginning to work with Mike Durkin to see how we could use CDBG dollars to integrate into the rental registration program and also into code enforcement inspections. So I just have to make sure that we do the code enforcement part of it and the rental registration in a way that is eligible to use CDBG funds. And keep in mind that all of these different activities are based wholly or at least 51% low to moderate income residents in our city. So we will be reaching out with the code enforcement department to accomplish that. We also are looking at a project for quality of life issues, security cameras. So I'm looking to see how we could use CDBG dollars, and it is an eligible activity. So I will be putting that together too and finding out which department in the city will carry out that project, because anything that we do with CDBG dollars will have to be an activity that we will report outcomes. So the installation and the purchase of the cameras is an eligible CDBG activity. So I'll be working out the details of that. Currently working also with MyCap.
Chair.
Yes.
Go.
You have a question?
Yeah, Beverly, the quality of life cameras. What's that about?
Security cameras. So these would be security cameras that we could decide target neighborhoods where we would like to place the cameras to monitor crime and so forth. So it's more of a security measure. So recent shootings and so forth, maybe we'll be able to capture some of the negative things that are happening in some of our neighborhoods.
The idea sounds reasonable, but it's coming out of economic development and not the police department.
No, this is coming out of the CDBG Community Development Department. It's an eligible crime prevention activity with CDBG funds.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair.
Yes, Anita.
Yes, Beverly, I love that idea. I had wanted those surveillance cameras in place a long time ago. Will the cameras be live monitored, or is it just recorded, an after the fact thing, or will there be bodies in front of the monitors?
So those are some of the questions that I cannot answer right now. So that would depend on what type of cameras. So I will be coordinating with whichever city department will be actually carrying out the project to know. So I won't be actually able to tell you now the details of what type of cameras. That will be up to Public Works or code enforcement or whatever department's going to work with me. And I'm going to provide the funding and administrating the actual project. So I will get those details.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to be kept abreast of it. I think that's something that the safety committee would be interested in. And I already have an existing plan that I had written up for the police department many years ago that could apply to the use of those cameras. So keep me abreast.
Mayor.
Just real quick, Councilwoman Davis actually took my thunder when I said this will be a conversation we'll have with the safety committee, but also with every member of city council. We've looked at this and we've been researching it. Is there eligibility? And I think what Beverly was just saying, that these are eligible activities, and we're going to figure out definitely between the police department as well as code enforcement. So all those pieces will be collected, and we will keep safety committee in council up to date of where we are and get some input as well.
Okay, thank you. Yes, and that is an important part to keep in mind, that I'm right now determining eligibility. Okay. And there's a lot of regulatory requirements that I have to, figure out first before we even figure out who's going to carry out the project. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Like I said, just keep me apprised. I already have a fully written out plan that absolutely will cover that. Thank you.
Certainly will. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then one of the last things, but it's very important, I'm working with a different sub-recipient agency, the nonprofits that we funded in our 2020 annual action plan, sent out the award letters, and now working with approximately 30 different agencies to get their agreements in place so that they can start their projects and requesting reimbursement from their CDBG home or ESG allocations.
Thank you very much, Beverly. Nikki, did you want to go ahead and conclude?
Thank you, through the chair. Just two last items that I wanted to bring up. Our planning commission meetings are open to council, and I just wanted to thank Councilwoman Davis and yourself, Councilwoman Adams-Zack, in participating in those meetings, because this is important to us as a committee. When the committee is presenting issues that come before in your different areas, to have a collective Q&A on what's happening in the wards. And I know a few times Councilwoman Davis has asked questions that were relevant in other wards, just to make sure that the committee as a whole is not approving things that is affecting your ward and you're not involved in the conversation. So I appreciate both of you being on, and I just want to encourage other council people, if you can, we are really trying to increase participation in those planning meetings so that we're all coming together as a city administration and council working on plans together. So I do appreciate you both for that, and any other council members. Councilwoman Turner has been on some, as well as Councilman Oliver. And then also you should have, if you haven't, you will be contacted by our consultants for the 20 federal place grant that we were successful in acquiring. They do have a timeline. We are pretty much rounding up, I guess you could say, phase 1 and 2, which is the stakeholder meetings and putting the prospectus together, as well as some data. So we would really appreciate your input in that and what the vision is going to look like for 20 federal. Once we're through this initial stakeholder meeting, we'd like to come back and present the entire plan and vision to you all before we start moving out to soliciting developers and investors in this plan. So if you can please respond, you should be getting a call or an email from, I believe her name is Allison. Your input is critical to the vision of 20 federal, because that is like our hub of downtown, and we want to make sure that it is inviting to all family and is definitely important to the growth of our city. So thank you for listening to us today, and we look forward to presenting this in the future.
Thank you very much, Nikki, for those updates. And as we mentioned several times, the next meeting we'll go ahead and we'll talk more in depth about some of these initiatives and projects and planning that are in place and in the works. Moving on to unfinished business. There is no unfinished business on the agenda. The next meeting will be set and announced, and I just want to check with my clerk, Valencia. Is there any motions that need to be made? Should we motion for the law department to draft a resolution to implement the strategy for the YNDC housing strategy, or there's nothing that needs to be done?
Nothing that needs to be done at this time, Madam Chairwoman. I heard that there was some conversation about there still needed to be some discussion, so they're not at the point where they're ready to draft the legislation per Ms. Posterly. So this is not appropriate time. So you're good with just dismissing the meeting.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, and I look forward to the next meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, and we are adjourned at 11:48. Thank you, everyone.